Most people think respect is earned through kindness. So they stay available. They stay patient. They explain themselves over and over again, hoping people will finally understand them. And slowly, they lose themselves. Because the harsh truth is this: some people do not respect kindness. They study it. They test it. They manipulate it. They watch how much disrespect you tolerate, how quickly you react emotionally, how desperately you try to keep the peace. And the moment they realize you fear conflict more than you value yourself, the power shifts. This is why some people walk into a room and instantly command respect without saying much, while others speak endlessly and are still ignored. It is not confidence. It is not status. It is emotional control. In this video, you will learn how manipulative people quietly gain influence over others, how emotionally disciplined people protect themselves without becoming cold, and why silence, boundaries, and calmness are often stronger than force. Because true respect is not loud. It is felt. #gain. Respect without making enemies. Gain respect without making enemies. Step 1. Understand how respect is lost. Most people do not lose respect in one dramatic moment. It happens slowly. A nervous laugh when they should have stayed silent. An apology they did not owe. A paragraph sent to someone who already decided not to understand them. A habit of explaining themselves to people who never explain anything back. And the painful part is this: good people often lose respect because they want peace, because they want harmony, because they believe honesty alone will protect them. But the world does not always reward honesty. Sometimes it studies it, measures it, uses it. There are people who walk into every room searching for emotional leverage. They observe weakness the way predators observe movement. Not always consciously, not always maliciously, but constantly. And if you never learn how respect is truly formed, you become easy to manipulate without even realizing it. This video is not about becoming cruel. It is not about dominating people. It is not about revenge. It is about understanding power, quiet power, the kind that protects your peace without destroying your soul. Because the strongest people are not loud. They do not constantly prove themselves. They do not beg to be understood. They understand something most people never learn. Respect grows in silence, long before it appears in words. Step 2. Master emotional discipline. Think about the people who naturally command respect. Not fear, not attention. Respect. When they speak, people listen. When they leave, the room changes. When challenged, they remain calm. Why? Because calmness signals control. Most people are ruled by emotion. The average person reacts instantly. They defend themselves instantly. They panic instantly. But someone who remains emotionally grounded becomes difficult to manipulate, and manipulators hate uncertainty. The easiest person to control is the person whose reactions are predictable, the person who always explains, always chases, always seeks validation, always panics at rejection, because once someone understands your emotional patterns, they can guide your behavior without force. This is why emotional discipline is one of the highest forms of protection. Not emotional suppression. Discipline. There is a difference. Suppression hides emotions. Discipline controls them. A stoic person still feels anger, still feels betrayal, still feels disappointment, but they refuse to hand emotional control to another person. And that changes everything. Step 3. Stop over-explaining yourself. One of the fastest ways to lose respect is over-explaining. This habit destroys more relationships, opportunities, and self-respect than people realize. Why do people over-explain? Fear. Fear of misunderstanding. Fear of rejection. Fear of conflict. Fear of being disliked. So they keep talking. They justify every decision, every boundary, every feeling. But the more desperate someone sounds to be understood, the weaker they appear. Not because vulnerability is weak, but because desperation removes authority. Strong-minded people understand something painful. Not everyone deserves access to your inner world. Some people only ask questions to find openings. Some people only listen so they can later use your emotions against you. Watch carefully. The manipulative person often encourages emotional exposure while revealing very little themselves. They study you while remaining unreadable. And most people never notice this imbalance. They walk away from conversations emotionally exposed while knowing almost nothing about the other person. That is not connection. That is vulnerability without protection. Healthy respect requires balance. Speak honestly, but do not emotionally spill yourself everywhere. A calm mind chooses carefully what deserves explanation. Sometimes silence protects you better than perfect words ever could. Step 4. Build boundaries. People can feel. Another uncomfortable truth. People often respect boundaries they complain about. Read that again. Weak boundaries invite hidden disrespect. When someone knows you will tolerate everything, they stop valuing your presence, not because you are worthless, but because humans naturally value what has standards. This is why people pleasers often feel invisible. They sacrifice constantly hoping loyalty will earn appreciation. But endless availability creates emotional imbalance. The more someone abandons themselves to keep others comfortable, the less seriously people take them. Because self-abandonment teaches others how to treat you. A person who cannot say no becomes emotionally negotiable. And manipulators love negotiable people. They test limits slowly. Small disrespect first. Tiny violations. Small guilt trips. Nothing obvious. Because manipulation rarely begins aggressively. It begins subtly. A joke at your expense. A delayed response designed to create anxiety. A dismissal disguised as honesty. A habit of making you feel guilty for having needs. And if you tolerate these small moments repeatedly, people learn your boundaries are flexible. This is why strong people address disrespect early, calmly, without drama, without emotional explosions, because emotional explosions often weaken authority. Calm correction is more powerful. A simple sentence can change the entire dynamic. I do not appreciate that. Do not speak to me that way. That does not work for me. No speeches, no emotional chaos, just clarity. The most respected people often speak the least when defending themselves. Step 5. Learn the difference between fear and respect. Now here is where many people become confused. They believe respect comes from being intimidating. It does not. Fear and respect are not the same thing. Fear creates compliance. Respect creates value. A manipulator may fear someone aggressive, but secretly feel no respect for them at all. Real respect comes from emotional stability, the ability to remain composed when others lose control. Think about how rare that is today. Most people are emotionally reactive. Everything controls their mood. Everything disturbs their peace. A single comment ruins their day. A delayed text creates panic. A disagreement becomes emotional warfare. But calmness changes social dynamics immediately. Because calm people become psychologically difficult to move. And people instinctively feel that strength. This is why silence is powerful. Not silent treatment. Not emotional punishment. True silence. the kind that comes from self-control, the kind that says, I do not need to chase this conversation. I do not need to prove myself. I do not need to react instantly. That energy unsettles manipulative people, because manipulation often depends on emotional urgency. If someone can rush your emotions, they can influence your decisions. This is why emotionally disciplined people pause before reacting. They observe first. And observation is dangerous to manipulators, because manipulation survives in emotional speed. Step 6. Study patterns, not words. One of the most important skills you can develop is learning to read emotional patterns, not words. Patterns. Words lie constantly. Patterns rarely do. A person may say they respect you while consistently dismissing your feelings. A person may say they care while only appearing when convenient. A person may promise loyalty while quietly competing with you behind your back. Patterns reveal truth. And once you begin studying patterns instead of promises, your entire life changes. You stop falling for performance. Many people are skilled performers. They know how to sound sincere. They know how to imitate empathy. They know how to appear trustworthy. But consistency exposes everyone eventually. This is why emotionally mature people observe slowly before trusting deeply. Not because they are cold, because they are careful. Trust should not be automatic. And one of the biggest mistakes emotionally exhausted people make is confusing attention with respect. Attention is easy to get. Respect is not. Someone can obsess over you and still disrespect you completely. Someone can desire you while secretly manipulating you. Do not confuse emotional intensity with emotional safety. They are not the same thing. Step 7. Understand the power of consequences. There is another harsh truth people avoid. Some individuals only respect consequences, not kindness, not patience, consequences. This does not mean becoming cruel. It means understanding reality. If someone repeatedly crosses boundaries without losing access to you, they learn there are no consequences for disrespect. And behavior without consequences repeats itself. This is why walking away is sometimes necessary, not to punish others, to protect yourself. A stoic person understands detachment, not emotional numbness. Detachment. The ability to release what continuously destroys inner peace. Most people stay too long in toxic dynamics because they fear loneliness. But loneliness is often less destructive than prolonged disrespect. Read that carefully. A peaceful mind in solitude is healthier than constant emotional warfare disguised as connection. And manipulators understand this fear deeply. They know many people would rather tolerate disrespect than face isolation. So they use emotional inconsistency. Warm one moment, cold the next. Affection one day, distance the next. This creates emotional confusion. And confused people become easier to control. Why? Because emotional instability creates obsession. The brain begins chasing certainty. Approval becomes addictive. This is why emotionally grounded people step back and observe behavior instead of chasing reassurance. They refuse to become emotionally addicted to unstable validation. Step 8. Stop seeking constant approval. Now let us talk about something deeper. Why do calm people naturally attract respect? Because emotional self-control signals inner security. People who constantly seek validation reveal internal instability, but people who remain centered communicate something powerful without words. I can survive without your approval. And independence changes social dynamics immediately. The desperate person gets tested constantly. The grounded person rarely does. Because people subconsciously sense emotional dependence, This is why detachment is misunderstood. Healthy detachment does not mean you stop caring. It means your self-worth no longer depends on external behavior. You stop collapsing emotionally every time someone misunderstands you, rejects you, ignores you, disagrees with you. And once that happens, you become harder to manipulate. Because manipulators depend on emotional hooks. Guilt, fear, approval, attention, validation. Remove those hooks, and their influence weakens immediately. Step 9. Stop trying to be liked by everyone. One of the most dangerous habits is constantly trying to be liked. This destroys authenticity, because people who fear rejection become shapeshifters. Different personality in every room, different opinions around different people, different energy depending on approval. And eventually they lose connection with themselves entirely. Respect begins with self-respect, not arrogance, self-respect, the ability to remain aligned with your values, even when approval disappears. And yes, this may upset certain people, especially manipulative individuals who benefited from your lack of boundaries. When you stop over-explaining, they become uncomfortable. When you stop reacting emotionally, they become confused. When you stop seeking permission to exist peacefully, they lose influence. And some people will call this cold. But there is a difference between cruelty and emotional independence. Cruel people harm others intentionally. Emotionally independent people simply stop abandoning themselves. That difference matters. Step 10. Control your reactions. Now notice something interesting. The strongest people are usually difficult to provoke because they understand emotional traps. Manipulators often provoke reactions intentionally. Why? Because emotional reactions reveal control points. The angrier you become, the easier you are to guide. This is why disciplined people pause before responding, not because they are weak, because they understand strategy. A calm response protects power. An uncontrolled reaction leaks it. This does not mean becoming emotionless. It means becoming conscious. There is a difference. An unconscious person reacts automatically. A conscious person chooses deliberately. And deliberate behavior creates authority. This is why silence often feels powerful. Not because silence itself is magical, but because restraint demonstrates control. Anyone can scream. Anyone can react impulsively. Very few people can remain composed under pressure. That rarity creates respect. Step 11. Refuse unnecessary emotional battles. Here's another lesson many people learn too late. You do not need to attend every emotional battle you are invited into. Some people survive entirely through chaos. Conflict gives them energy. Drama gives them relevance. And emotionally reactive people become trapped in endless psychological warfare, trying to defend themselves. But Stoic thinking teaches something different. Not every accusation deserves explanation. Not every insult deserves response. Not every misunderstanding deserves correction. Sometimes protecting peace requires disengagement, and this frustrates manipulative people deeply, because they often rely on emotional access. If they can control your attention, they can influence your state of mind. This is why protecting your mental space matters. What you repeatedly tolerate eventually shapes your emotional reality. Step 12. Learn from betrayal without becoming bitter. Now let us speak honestly about betrayal. Betrayal changes people, especially repeated betrayal. It creates hyper-awareness, distrust, emotional exhaustion. Some people become colder after betrayal. Others become desperate for reassurance. Both reactions are understandable. But Stoicism teaches a third path: awareness without bitterness. This is difficult, because pain naturally pushes people toward emotional extremes. But wisdom grows in balance, not blind trust. not permanent paranoia. Balanced awareness, the ability to see human nature clearly without losing your humanity in the process. Yes, some people manipulate. Yes, some people exploit kindness. Yes, some people mistake patience for weakness. But becoming cruel yourself is not strength. Real strength is remaining disciplined in a world addicted to emotional chaos. Step 13. Become emotionally selective. One of the most powerful things you can learn is how to become emotionally unreadable without becoming emotionally unavailable. These are not the same thing. Emotionally unavailable. People avoid connection completely. Emotionally disciplined people simply choose carefully who receives access. That distinction changes everything. Not everyone deserves your deepest emotions immediately. Not everyone deserves unlimited explanations. Not everyone deserves endless chances. And once you accept this, your relationships improve dramatically because selective energy creates healthier dynamics. You stop investing deeply in people who repeatedly disrespect your peace. You stop chasing emotionally inconsistent individuals. You stop trying to save relationships that survive only through your effort. And something strange happens. Your mind becomes quieter, not because life becomes perfect, but because you stop emotionally fighting for people who already decided not to value you properly. Step 14. Remove the fear of losing people. There is a silent confidence that develops when you no longer fear losing people who disrespect you. That confidence cannot be faked. It changes your posture, your tone, your decisions, because fear disappears, and fear is what manipulators depend on most. Fear of abandonment, fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of loneliness. But once someone becomes emotionally grounded, those tactics lose power. This is why self-respect is deeply connected to emotional freedom. The more you respect yourself, the less control unhealthy people gain over your mind. And that is liberation. Not dominance, liberation. The freedom to remain calm without surrendering yourself. Final step. Protect your peace quietly. At the end of the day, respect is not built through force. It is built through consistency. Consistent boundaries, consistent calmness, consistent self-control, consistent standards. People trust emotional stability. Even manipulative people recognize it instinctively. Because emotional stability cannot be easily controlled. And that is why stoic discipline matters. Not to become cold, not to become detached from humanity, but to remain centered in a world constantly trying to pull you into emotional reaction. Remember this carefully. The loudest person in the room is rarely the strongest. The most reactive person is rarely the most respected. True strength is quieter than people expect. It walks calmly, speaks carefully, observes deeply, and when necessary, it leaves silently. Not out of weakness, out of wisdom. Because some battles are won not by fighting harder, but by refusing to surrender your peace.